All right. Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. I believe we will have several people from all around the world joining us from different parts of the continents. So, some of you are in the evening, like me. I'm hosting from Malaysia. We have some people who are joining us from Europe, and then there are, of course, some people who are joining us from the Americas, South America. So, wherever you are, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is an important topic that we are going to talk about today. And we have an interesting topic. We have interesting speakers. We have very informative information coming up to you. So, welcome. So today's webinar is all about mapping safeguarding maturity in sport, insights from NOCs, national sports organizations, international federations, national federations, where we will be presenting the findings of the 2026 Global Safeguarding in Sport Survey. If you guys don't know me already, my name is Neo, and I'm the co-founder and managing partner of Ignites, and I will be helping to host today's session. Now, for those of you who may be joining us for the very first time, because Ignites, of course, we have been hosting several different online webinars since our establishment in 2020 during COVID. Just to give you a brief information about Ignites, Ignites is an international sports events company with two main focus areas: events management and safeguarding in sport. We work with sport organizations, organizing committees, and partners across the full life cycle of events, providing consultancy, operational support, education, and practical solutions. In safeguarding, our work focuses on helping organizations strengthen their frameworks, build capacity, and translate safeguarding commitments into operational systems that can work in practice. Now, in the space of safeguarding, we are part of the Building European Safe Sport Together project funded by the Erasmus Plus program from the European Commission. And we have provided our services and solutions to the Paris 2024 Olympic Games Organizing Committee and both the 2025 Winter and Summer Bakuriani European Youth Olympic Festivals. So that's a little bit about us. Once again, thank you very much for joining us live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. We are very pleased to have you here with us for this important conversation. As I mentioned earlier, this is a very interesting topic. Neil, Laura, and Daniela, they will be bringing us through this presentation. And just to let you know that the Global Safeguarding in Sports Survey 2026 was conducted in partnership with us in Ignites, Safe Sport International, and Re-Events. The survey gathered perspectives from the various stakeholders that I mentioned earlier: NOCs, NSOs, IFs, and NFs from all five continents, with the aim of better understanding where sport organizations currently are in their safeguarding journey. The findings were first presented at the Safe Sport International Global Conference in Cape Town, and today's webinar will give us an opportunity to share those insights with the wider sport community. I already see many people logging on, so thank you very much for joining us. Now, during this presentation, we have three speakers. As I mentioned earlier, we have Neil Anderson, the CEO of Safe Sport International, who will help frame the importance of this survey and the broader safeguarding context. We then have my fellow managing partner and colleague from Ignites, Daniela Negreda, who will take us through the methodology and later share key insights from the findings itself. And we have Laura Grimaud, data analyst from Re-Events, who will walk us through the analytical dashboard and the data behind the survey. So Re-Events is also represented by Amandine Hervey, a data analyst who was part of the operational data team for the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. She joined Re-Events nearly 2 years ago from the beginning of its journey and now works on data projects that support the operational optimization of sporting events. So, welcome to three speakers plus Amandine, who will be supporting Laura in answering any questions that the public may have about the data and the tool that was used to process and to come up with the report for the survey itself. Now, Along the presentation, should you have any questions, please feel free to type it in the comment box in the platform that you are currently viewing this session. So you can put it in the comments in YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, and we will be able to see it. Of course, if we have many questions and we will not be able to get it through all of them, we will, of course, try to come back to you at a later time. But feel free to put in your questions. I'll take it at the end and I will direct them to the respective speaker if you put their names on the comments as well. All right, so I'm not going to bore everybody anymore. I'm going to pass it on to Neil to kick us off this important topic that we have to see how far safeguarding has gone and where we are in the journey in 2026. Off to you.
Thank you very much, Neo, and I'm delighted to talk to you all today, wherever you are in the world and whatever time it is for you. I think I'd like to start with a reflection. We've just, within the last few weeks, had the Global Safe Sport Conference in Cape Town, and I think it would be fair to say that a recurring theme across many of the presentations and conversations was the understanding that safe sport does not happen by chance. It does not emerge just because we want it or we think it should be in place. It's not about intentions. Safe sport is about action. It's about the deliberate choice to choose, to build, to resource, and to sustain activity that will help us make sport safer for those who are participating in and enabling others to participate in sport. It's a fantastic opportunity for us to make sure that sport is the value that we all believe it should be. It is for society, for community, for relationships, for health, for well-being, and for the joy and fun of competition. Whether you are a local competitor like me, who just likes to go out and sail his boat in the odd sailing race, or whether you're competing on a national stage. I think we all share the joy of participating in sport when it is safe. But what to do? Where should our efforts focus? And this session is really valuable because it helps us look at where we have data, where we have knowledge about patterns and trends and activities in safeguarding in sport. Trends matter because they'll tell us where progress is happening and where progress isn't happening, where there are gaps. So I welcome surveys like this because they give us an idea of where to reflect and where to focus our efforts to make sport safer for everybody. One of the clearest messages about a maturing sector that is safeguarding people is not just if we've got policies in place, it's about whether the capacity and systems are in place to help people safe, keep people safe. We have lots of frameworks. We've got the International Safeguards for All in Sport is a fantastic framework. We have other useful safe sport principles that guide us into what should be in place as an idea. But having surveys like the one that's going to be discussed today is an important tool in measuring areas where we have information and we can track progress. So I'm very much looking forward to enjoying this data from Daniela next and hearing about the methodology. I hope you'll listen to it critically and think about how it might apply in your situation, in your organization. Please take the data and go from the data and say, what is that really telling us about how sport could be safe and how we could make it safer for everybody who participates in sport. So Daniela, tell us more about the survey and take us through some of the data.
Danny, are you having some trouble sharing your screen? Okay.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Sorry, I can't mute and unmute if I'm sharing my screen. I apologize for that.
It's all right.
So let me put the presentation here.
Of course. Sorry to everyone. Well, this is the reality of remote virtual webinars. We do have some technical difficulties from time to time. But I see a lot of people already logged in with us. Welcome, everyone, from wherever you are. I see a lot of our friends from Azerbaijan has joined us as well on YouTube. Welcome. And while we wait for Daniela to put on her presentation, maybe you guys can let us know where you are. Type in the comments where you guys are from. Yes, I see a lot of Azerbaijan flags, maybe some Brazilian flags as well. That's great. And Danny, are you ready?
Yes, so you can see the presentation now and you can hear me.
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Neil and Neil, for those introductions. Very excited to share the results of the survey. And we did that at the Safe Sport International, and we start talking about the methodology. It's important to understand where is this information coming from, and also the understanding of how much we advanced just in the methodology. This is the first survey of its type in a global scale, right? And it really looked into the organizations, as Neo mentioned, international federations, national Olympic committees, national sports organizations, so depending on the country, right? And also the national federations. This was done over the 5 continents. And how it was done is that we had 3 online anonymous questionnaires. So we submit the questionnaires and people could reply. We would not know who it was. And we did that between the 17th of March to the 10th of April of 2026. So fairly recent. We had a very good response. A total of 64 national Olympic committees or national sports organizations responded. We had 24 international federations and 216 national federations participating, right? This was from all 5 continents. We had put a minimum of 15% of the universe responding for our sample, and we exceeded that tremendously, right? We were over 30% on the NOCs and IFs, and on the NFs, we had 83 countries represented. So we can see that that was actually a very good and sizable sample for us. On the analysis side, what we've done is that we aggregated the responses to analyze, right? So it was already an anonymized form, and as we aggregated, we are not able at any point in time to pinpoint, oh, it was this person or this organization. And that gave confidence for the people to actually report the reality of their maturity. The data was actually processed by Reevents, and it was analyzed by Ignites, and we kept the GDPR compliance, right, throughout the process. I will invite our colleague Laura Grimaud from Reevents to just explain briefly how this data was aggregated, as I mentioned, through an analytical dashboard. Laura?
Thank you, Daniela. Hello, everyone. First of all, Amandine and I were delighted to work on this project. In order to visualize and analyze the survey results, we have created this dashboard on Power BI. So first, we had to clean and harmonize the data before moving into visualization thanks to Python and AI. So this tool was a real-time saver for the analysis as it gathered the 3 different survey sources, IF, NF, and NOC in one place, enabling cross-analysis and easy comparison across organization types. Each tab corresponds to a section of a survey, and the dashboard follows the same logic as the questionnaire itself. We start with a broad overview before diving into more and more detail. We begin with a survey overview and a maturity overview. Then we go further into the actions put in place, starting with the safeguarding mechanism, the reporting process, the investigation of reported cases, and finally, adjudication. The dashboard covers all closed-ended questions and multiple choice questions from the survey. As you can see, each section can be filtered by organization type, survey edition, by continent, and by safeguarding status. The dashboard is fully interactive. Indeed, for example, clicking on any answer will filter all of the charts, allowing you to see how organization that gave that specific answer responded to the rest of the questions, enabling deeper analysis for analytics. Back to you, Daniela. Thank you.
Say that the analytical dashboard made our life much easier. You could see how easy it was to navigate through one point to the other. So we would not have to go through all the details of the charts here, because Ignites got the analytical dashboard and created, a report, very detailed. We also provide an analytical summary and insights. And we will be discussing today the global insights. And I'll put at the end of the presentation the link where you can download all this material, because everything is available to be seen and downloaded. So let's start, right? The key finding was that safeguarding is present across the sport organizations globally. However, we see that the operational maturity still is uneven, right? And what we will see here is 16 insights that we are bringing together that demonstrates what we are talking about. How is it prevalent, and also what is that difference in the maturity? We will start with our first insights that talk about the pathway. So how we deal with the pathway is that you have safeguarding mechanisms in place, and this can be a policy, this can be an education, right? But we also look into the whole pathway that makes it effective, being you have the prevention, you have the awareness, but also when there is an incident, when there is a case reported, that you are managing that from beginning to end. So what we can see here is that the pathway narrows. We had, from all the respondents, 70% indicating that they had safeguarding mechanisms in place. So this is really good. We can see the safeguarding is now present globally. However, only 50% have a reporting mechanism, being even an email where people can communicate if there is an incident. And from there, we see that 41% actually investigate when they do have a report. And finally, 32% actually take an action in adjudicating, in verifying, that complaint and being able to create a sanction. So we really see that it drops from 70% that have a mechanism in place to 32% that actually go throughout the entire pathway of managing cases. The second insight still relates to this presence or maturity of the safeguarding across organizations. So we see 70% of organizations across the globe, but when we look at organizational type, we see a big difference between international federations, where 96% of them reported saying that they do have safeguarding in place, versus 67 and 69% for NOCs and NFs. And when we look by continent, we also see a big difference here in the continental representation. Oceania even though the data set was smaller because there are less organizations and nations in Oceania, it was reported that 100% of the organizations, or 100% of the organizations that participated in the survey, have safeguarding in place, while in Africa, it's only 51%. At the report, you have all the details, number of organizations that reported by type, IFs, NOCs, NFs, and by continent. So you can look into more detail. But here is important to see that there is a trend and a difference between organizational types and also by continents. Now, we also looked into not only asking people if they have safeguarding in place, but also for them to qualify the stage that they were in on the safeguarding implementation. And we had 7 stages. And what we noticed is that we had one of the stages that said we have safeguarding in place and it's fully effective, right? And when you look by organizational type here, 42% of IF said they were fully effective, 23 on NOCs, and 24 of national federations. We cut the data only of those, and we looked at on, for instance, on the IFs, 42% say that they are fully effective, but only 90% of them have reporting. So 10% of those that consider fully effective already don't have a reporting, and that number goes down to 70% on adjudication. On NOCs, it's even bigger, right? When you cut down to the adjudication, and only 33% of those that say that are fully effective actually have the full pathway implemented. So this shows us that we have different concepts of what is a fully effective implemented safeguarding in our organizations. So this is a very big insight for us, that we need to establish standards of what are we talking about to be a fully effective safeguarding, to have a fully effective safe sport in the organization. The good news is that we saw that the barriers to implement are operational. They're not ideological. For a long time, we believed that there was a barrier of saying this is not important, that we do not need, that we shouldn't be focusing on that. And that's not the reality of the responses that we got. What we heard for those that don't have safeguarding in place, or those that want to keep developing it, is that they have the barriers as operational. It's finance resources, it's human resources, is the governance structure, is access to expertise, right? Operational capacity. So this is good news, because the intent is there. We just need now to figure out how to operationalize those, because the ideology, that understanding of the need is now prevalent within the organizations. A very interesting finding is that safeguarding today is primarily managed through different areas of organizations. So it's existing structures such as integrity functions, disciplinary structures, legal, functions that are actually managing safeguarding. So this is not a problem. This might be a solution, that when we say we have limited, resources, well, let's see how we can optimize resources that we have. Very interestingly, is that 81% of the organizations are actually mentioning that they do have safeguarding officer across the organizations. So this is very positive. It's just that that person might not be within a safeguarding structure. They might be embedded in different responsibilities, right? Might be a legal person, it might be a head coach, it might be a psychologist. So it's just understanding how we can optimize, right, the limited capacity that we have through existing organizations, if that's the situation of your organization. The other thing also notice is that what we have for safe sport today remains very much around policies, right? And reporting mechanisms. So when we ask what are the mechanics of safeguarding that you have, 80% of people say it's reporting, or it's a policy, or it's a disciplinary procedure. However, there are still some areas that are lacking. One we just saw, 39% only have an actual department. And a very interesting finding is only 32% have guidelines for social media harassment. And we saw Safe Sport International has recently launched the importance of online abuse in partnership with Sport Radar. And we know how prevalent, we know how important that is, and we are not seeing it reflect in implementation just yet. So it's a way of calling, all organizations to think of not only on the traditional, let's call it, transgressive behaviors that we expect, but also how this is affecting the world online. The coverage is still much stronger for athletes and entourage personnel than it is for other areas, right? So it's very much centered around the core sport personnel. And we cannot forget, for instance, our volunteers. We know how important volunteers are for sport. And I'm not talking just of volunteers, for instance, on large multi-sport events. We have to think of the coach of a grassroots sport, which is a volunteer. And we have to ensure that all of those are actually captured when we are talking about our policies and procedures. We shouldn't be leaving people out of it, because when there is an incident, we need to ensure that we have looked around the entire ecosystem of the organization. Good news again, when we look at when the mechanisms are implemented, thinking about the time frame, right? 80% of organizations indicated that their policies, their mechanics are implemented all the time. This is really good. And for some organizations, it makes sense to have, for instance, just at Olympic Games, if they are responsible, for instance, only for the teams that go and compete, or just for international events. So it's good news to see that people are understanding that transgressive behavior, it's not happening at a point in time, but it's something that it's continuous. And we see that with 80% indicating that that's how they are implementing their policies. This is a worrying part of it and indicates progress, but still that we have a long journey ahead of us. What we see is that although reporting systems are widely implemented, we saw, 50% organizations already indicate that they have reporting mechanisms. They say that 89% of organizations are offering anonymous reporting, 89 through an email, and even 70% on in person. However, the perception of the reporting is still not there. So we have 10% only that rate the effectiveness of their reporting mechanism, right? And a very moderate group rating, that it's still not there. And what we heard through open-end comments is that they don't trust, there is no confidence in the effectiveness because of fear of retaliation, for some cultural resistance, and also because of inconsistency in the implementation, meaning I report, but I don't know where it's going, or I report that is nothing is happening, right? So it's important to have the reporting, but we also need to ensure that people are confident that we have the full process in place. And this is no surprise because we saw the pathway, right? How it actually was decreasing from having a policy to having a reporting all the way into having an adjudication that will generate a sanction. So this actually is what ended up happening, not generating the effectiveness or the confidence in its effectiveness. I'm trying to go quickly because I imagine there are questions and I want to leave time for us to discuss the findings as well. Insight number 10 is about investigation. And what we saw is that a central component of the investigation is a multi-agency collaboration. So we see that at the center of safeguarding investigation, you might have law enforcement, public authorities, you will have the collaborations between clubs with national Olympic committees, with national federations, social services, and even government. So this is a characteristic that depending on the case that you have a different group organizations that have to come together to investigate and to find a solution. So this is very much expected, right? In what to do with an investigation, because safeguarding, and let's call it different than doping, for instance, that it's always a clear way of investigating, right? Here it's not. Transgressive behavior comes in so many different forms and shapes that you are required to have a different group to respond to concerns. I hope it makes sense for everybody here. I will love to hear comments and questions, okay? And you can use the chat already in your channel to post them. Once the organizations have an adjudication process, they then create a sanction. And very interesting that globally, we see that organizations have equal authority to recommend as well as to sanction. So 75% in both cases, they might recommend a sanction to be applied, and 70% of the organizations, might have a direct sanctioning power. Again, it will depend on the nature of the case and also where the case is coming from, right? If you have something that is reported from a club to a national federation, most likely they will be recommending. But if it is a club incident within that jurisdiction, most likely there will be a direct sanction happening. But it's very good to see that there is this understanding of the different powers that a sanction can have in the organizations. On the adjudication, primarily for organizations globally, it's a committee base that makes a decision. And this is very positive. So you don't have a single individual making a decision on a case. We see the different bodies who are responsible for adjudication. So we heard about disciplinary commissions, safeguarding, integrity commissions, ethics committees, and even board of directors or executive committees. What's very positive to hear is that there is the understanding that it shouldn't be one person alone making the decision, but you need to have a body that is in there, that has received the investigation, and then is able to create a sanction and judge it based on a collective decision. We talk about the emerging need, what is required, what is requested from organizations to either implement or continue to implement safeguarding mechanisms. And we saw that the number one was about education training. We hear that a lot. So we had 4.4 out of 5 and 4.5 out of 5 of organizations rating training and education as their top priority to continue the advancement of safeguarding. And this is among organizations with safeguarding mechanisms in place and organizations without safeguarding mechanisms in place. Other topics that also require support that they need to continue is leadership. This is very important. If you don't have the leadership on board, it's very difficult for you to continue to advance. You might have, you know, a lone safeguarding officer trying to carry the flag, but if there is no support, there's very little that can advance. Clear roles and responsibilities. We talked about it before when we saw that some other areas, right, are today responsible for it. That's fine, as long as roles and responsibilities are very clear. Human resources and financial resources. This is, we want to continue to advance, we need to have people and we have to have money behind it. We talked about implementation, right? And the number of organizations that actually have some safeguarding in place. And we see a big drop between international federations, so high level, elite here, to national federations. So we go from 96 to 69. And with clubs and leagues, even though we did not research directly clubs and leagues, we asked national federations, the ones that have their members, right, as clubs and leagues, to estimate. And what we saw is that nearly half estimate that there is almost no presence of safeguarding within their affiliated clubs and leagues. So we are seeing progression, but still the cascading is just taking a little bit longer. We know safeguarding is a journey, but we need to ensure that we are all walking this path together, right? It's a journey and it's a collective journey. We cannot leave anybody behind. We need to ensure that international federation, national Olympic committees, national federations, and let's talk about grassroots, right? Clubs, leagues, studios, dojos are also in this journey with us. Let's all hold hands and go together here, because we will elevate the safe sport worldwide. The good news is that we see the commitment, right? We see the commitment of organizations to continue the development. We see the commitment of organizations to start the development. And this is across all types of organizations and all regions, right? You are seeing the ratings here, international federations that are already at 96%. They are very much commitment. They have the understanding. We have to continue to implement. The ones that don't have, figuring out how to make sure that they have, and the ones that already have safeguarding in place, how they can improve within their mechanisms. And very last one, it's about culture. So what we've seen throughout these insights is that awareness, training, or having a document in place, that alone does not translate into a trustworthy culture. We need to ensure that the structure is in place, but that structure needs to be trusted. We need to ensure that our leadership, is walking the talk, right? We need to ensure that if there is a report, that report is taken seriously, it's investigated, and there is a conclusion coming out of that. Because we see the discrepancy. There are awareness in place, we have anonymous reporting, but still we see that respondents have fear, right? They are reluctant to to report, we see that they don't trust, as of now, the system. So, and I heard something during the SSI, is that policies do not protect people. It's people who protect people. And that's very, very important, and something that we have to take charge of it. It's okay to have a policy, but if we are not following through, we are not actually, as people, protecting our people. And we will only have the culture of a safe sport when we are all really, talking and doing what the paper says. So this is a key message. And just today I saw a post from Mercy from Kenya, who did a big study about the culture and effectiveness. I actually recommend us to keep doing studies and being able to see how together all our data can assist on the implementation. So this was quick, so we can open, the floor for discussion. We have about 15 minutes, a little bit more. I'm placing here our QR code where you can download all the reports. So as I've mentioned, you have the full written report with all the information at global, continental, and organizational type level. We also have an analytical summary if you don't want to read the full report. And we provided 4 insight cards. One is the global ones that you've just seen. We also have one for international federations, for national Olympic committees, and for national federations. All of them available for download for the whole sport community. I will pass it back to Neil, who will be opening the floor for Q&As.
Thank you very much, Danny. Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Neil, for that very insightful presentation of the survey. We have 2 questions from the floor, and the first one, I'm gonna read it out, and I think this is more towards Neil and probably Danny as well. So I'll leave it to you both after hearing this question to answer. The question goes along: if an organization has a safeguarding policy and delivers regular training, but stakeholders still do not fully trust the reporting system, would you consider that organization to be safeguarding mature? Maybe I'll pass it first to Neil, and then Danny, you can complement what Neil would start off the answer with.
Great question. And I'll start with kind of the awareness that we don't have, an agreed definition of safeguarding maturity. There's an understanding within us in the field. But from my perspective, from a Safe Sport International perspective, I'll be direct, that would not be mature for me. That would be an emergent organization in a safeguarding policy. The fact that policy is in place and regular training is there is very positive, very good. However, the action about whether trust exists and whether a joined up reporting system exists is unclear, and maturity, I think, would be characterized by exactly those things: fair, credible investigations that people can trust, outcomes that are known and recognized as just. There's regular ongoing learning and monitoring, plenty of reporting options and pathways for people to raise concerns at any stage and at any level. Those would be the sort of indications of a mature organization. So plenty, as Daniela was saying, a journey to get there, and that would be an organization on the journey, but not quite there yet for mature.
Danny, would you like to complement before we go on to the next question?
Yeah, I think Neil, nailed it. Very good to explain all the past. And it's something that I talked, actually it was about my last insight, right? The culture is very important. You can have the structure in place, but if it's not upheld, then you are not effective, right? You can check all the boxes, but if the boxes are just on paper, then you are not what we consider a fully matured or an effective organization.
Okay, thank you, Danny. Thank you, Neil. Let's go on to the second question. So looking at the safeguarding pathway, where do you think the greatest risk lies for sport organizations today? Not having policies, not receiving reports, or not having the capacity to investigate and adjudicate concerns effectively? Maybe we start with Danny, and then after that we go on to Neil.
Interesting question, because one talk about maturity, right? The first question, this talks about risk. Well, the risk is not having the full process. I don't think we can say, oh, if you don't have reporting, well, if you don't have reporting, you will not have any of the other phases, right? But it's very risky for you to have a reporting system and stop there. This is what we were talking about, the confidence that you build, right? Or worse, you have a report, you investigate, but then, well, let's suppose it's a very good coach that delivers medals, so let's just, ignore it. Every single one of the steps present risk. And this is why we say, how can we be effective? How can we be risk-free? First, there is no risk-free because things will still happen, okay? However, the difference is when an incident happens, if you have the full pathway, if you have all the steps to take and you know how to take it, you can contain the situation and you can avoid the harm continues to happen. So very simple answer, all of them are risky, right? And this is the reason why you should have an effective full pathway implemented.
Thank you, Danny. Neil, anything to add on to that?
Yes, I think that I would concur with Daniela in the sense that it's the pathway of everything in place, whether that's sequential or not. But the ability to be ready to recognize multiple options for reporting, a response to that reporting that is timely and person-centered, and a remedy at the end is really important. And it's all of those things working together for the benefit of those who are affected. And I think sometimes the biggest risk is that we forget that there are people affected every time a concern is raised, and we're not putting their needs at the heart of our responses. So being person-centered, being trauma-informed, looking at the remedy from their perspective, designing the systems with the athletes and affected persons in mind. Those are where the biggest failures are, when it's not joined up and it's not protecting the people it's there to protect. It's protecting an ideal or an organization, which is not the purpose. The purpose is to protect people and to enable them to enjoy and participate in sport, and to make sports safe and inclusive so they can do so.
Yeah, we have a comment from the floor. He is the president of the Malaysian American Football Federation, and he said everyone is always in firefighting mode. That's always been the mentality, only doing something when something happens. I think that's something that resonates a lot with Neil, especially you who have been in the safe sport environment for a long time. Maybe you wanna kind of comment a little bit on that comment.
Well, I think if I think back to the history of the field, if I go way back to early founders of Safe Sport International and Celia Brackenridge, she would probably say that being in firefighting mode is a big step forward from where we were, which was denial that this was even happening. So let's recognize that as a field, we are moving forward in recognizing and responding to this, and use that energy as a field to say that, yes, let's move out of firefighting mode. The more we can protect, often safeguarding, as you know, is often talked about protection and response. I think it's somewhat simplistic, but if we go with that, if the more we can do that, it creates protective systems, places where people can be cared for and they can report early and concerns can be managed early, we will have to fight less fires. We will have a much safer environment. So that is the case, but we need to invest in protection whilst making sure that we have robust response systems for when we need them.
Yes, I completely agree on that. And to that point, I think as you said, we have actually moved on into a more modern phase where we actually use more technology to help us in a lot of our discoveries and reporting tools and stuff. I just want to have a question towards our colleagues from Laura and Re-Events, because you guys are in this field. You are in technology, especially with data, using a lot of data to help in the preparation of events and such. And this time you are helping, you are a key role in processing this data for safeguarding. So maybe you can share with us a little bit of your experience with processing this data, and how actually Re-Events can help organizations that need to process data, that they do not have any tools to process data. How can you guys help them in safeguarding?
Yeah, in fact, it's pretty. Will not say maybe easy, but it's really from independent from each organization, which have data to really process those data. For example, we didn't know about safeguarding before, and Daniela was really happy to communicate with us about that topic, and we really understood those topic to process with that view the data, and we really fit the analysis with the way that the client wants to analyze also the data, the survey, and so on. So for that part, it was really on based on the survey directly to really go deeper on the data and really be quicker on the analysis, and we took the data as there were at the beginning, but we can go to a more structured view of the data with API, with structured data on databases and so on, to really build a platform to analyze deeper the organization and each operation in those events, because each operation can be optimized. So that's why with data it could be easier.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Amandine. We know that data right now it's very important, and that is going to teach us how to move forward and give us insight to what not to do in the future, what to expect, and that's what data can provide us with, right? um there is no other questions from the floor, but I think I'm gonna share my screen so that everybody who is going to who is still viewing with us will be able to contact any of our speakers today for them to ask any further questions that you may not feel comfortable to share in public, but you want to contact them directly. So let me just share my screen, and you have on the screen right now the three speakers QR codes, and you may please contact them directly. You have Laura from Re-Events, who I'm sure if you have any question for Amandine, she will be able to also pass on the question. You have Danny, you can contact her for any questions that you may have on our solutions and our services that we provide in Ignites in terms of event management and also safeguarding in sport. And of course, you may contact Neil. Please add him on LinkedIn if you need any further information about the safeguarding environment, and history, and also some resources, further resources into research, and investigations that have been taken place, please reach out to Neil directly. So in this event, I think I want to take this opportunity to thank everybody who have joined us today. Please keep the conversation going. We are really in the preliminary stage of safeguarding, but we are taking really good steps towards making sport safer for everyone, not just for athletes, but the entourage, the spectators. Everybody around sport should feel safe to enjoy sport in its purity, which is competition. So thank you very much, and thank you very much to Laura, Amandine, Neil, and Danny for presenting this very important topic. We hope that the conversation continues, and we hope to see everyone out there reach out. Don't be afraid to speak up, and don't be afraid to question anything. You have our email addresses. I mean, sorry, you have the QR codes up there. And please reach out to us, and we will hope to see you in the next conversation that we have about safeguarding and any other conversations that is important to the safety of sport. Thank you.